Hi, the topic today is vendors or third-party providers. Do we really need them? I want to take you back, way back to 1989. I started a new job, and I found out part of my job was to initiate a direct mail campaign to a list of 40,000 individuals who had given to a capital campaign, and ask for ongoing support, celebrate the success, and try to convert a number of those capital donors to annual fund donations. So what do we do? This is 1989, but we had to come up with a strategy. Why would people do this? We had to create the case for support, the ongoing case. That took a lot of thinking through. We had to make sure that case related to the mission of the organization. We had to write the letter. We had to create the package. We even did a stuffing exercise with all the staff to mail out the initial batch, 10,000 letters. We had to handle the responses one at a time. We had to receipt and thank you them individually with handwritten signatures. We were very successful. And that list went on for decades, producing millions and millions of dollars. Compare that to now. Well, what do we do now? Well, if it's an annual campaign, we'll probably have an annual meeting with our service provider, if we've chosen that provider. We'll have a discussion about the case. The vendors will go away and propose a strategy, number of mailings, response rates, frequency of mailings. They'll come back to us. Once we raise our hand up, say, go ahead, they'll create copy. They'll create the package. They'll put fancy envelopes together for us. They'll strategize the segmentation. They may even control our database. In many cases, we've turned over the use of our database to third-party providers. They'll then produce the package, they'll execute it, mail it. They may even handle the response, the receiving, the data input. Certainly the thanking and the follow-up. It's in the hands of third-party providers. We're going to discuss that today, but first, I'm Ken. This is the Empowerment Dialogue YouTube channel for fundraisers. This channel is dedicated to empowering fundraisers to empower others to fulfill their philanthropic dreams. On this channel, we'll address all the challenges and possibilities that can make our jobs better. It's a collaborative effort. Please give me your feedback and subscribe, give thumbs up, all those good YouTube things that promote the channel and create a forum for fundraisers. But back to the topic. The use of third-party providers. I'm putting it on the table here. I described what I did 30-odd years ago and how it's typically done now. Not in all cases, but I'm generalizing, and I appreciate that. But we've handed over a lot of our operations to third-party providers. In the process, well, we're probably more efficient. We probably send a lot more solicitation out. In that process, though, have we lost the connection to our donors? Are we arm's length from our key supporters, the people that pay the bills? Another question, are we really cultivating stronger relationships? I love to tell charitable organizations that part of our annual fundraising, our annual communications, is to feed the philanthropic pipeline, to enhance the relationships with people who have signified, through acquisition, they've signified an initial interest in our cause. But are we feeding the pipeline for leadership, major and planned gifts? Because a key role of that annual acquisition, solicitation, resolicitation process, which is driven by marketing, and I dare say driven by third-party providers, is that really doing its utmost to develop leadership, major, and plan gifts for the future? Because that's a key goal of that area of fundraising. Let's talk about some trends. Let's talk about what's happening. Well, and we know what's happening, and it's been happening for almost 10 years, and those annual solicitation, resolicitation is getting more and more difficult. And I sympathize with people who are charged with that responsibility. Those trends are down. It's harder and harder and harder. There's fewer people giving more, and that widespread support is more and more difficult. It becomes a vortex. It destroys relationships. In this over-solicitation, it destroys relationships. And guess what? We can't afford to jump out of that vortex. The answer is always the same. We have to mail more. We have to try harder. And we have a third-party provider who's saying precisely that. The same thing is happening with other areas. I don't know if I call it fundraising, but it's under the fundraising umbrella. Things like lotteries or events, large events, bigger the better, more. These are managed almost exclusively by third-party providers. In fact, the results of those efforts are often siloed for a period of time, or even indefinitely in some cases, siloed from other types of more personal fundraising. You can't go to my event participants. I want them for next year to go on the run or the bicycle ride or whatever. Whatever you do, don't phone them up and talk to them about a planned gift prospect. We don't realize that a key part of all those areas of fundraising is to feed that philanthropic pipeline. And we ask why. First of all, there's a basic problem with what I'll call the overuse of third-party providers in fundraising. The goal of a third-party provider is profit. And I don't blame them. I used to be one. I know. I have a bottom line, or I had a bottom line. So they have a bottom line, and it's to produce profit. Consequently, they will almost never use the strategy of less solicitation, less acquisition, even though it might be the right strategy. And they are always moving, consequently, to a less personal connection with the donor and prospective major planned gift donor. Even lead generation in those rarefied areas of fundraising, which I call strategic philanthropy, leadership gifts, major gifts, planned gifts, we use more and more third-party providers to create leads. We call it lead generation for the pipeline. So we have pipelines all across the fundraising world that are front-end loaded. Tens of thousands of people, because vendors have generated the leads, but we don't know how to, or we don't have the resources to make full use of those leads. It's the same vortex as the annual fund. And we have to start to seriously question what we're doing in the whole area of fundraising. I turn to senior management and ask this: is your job become one of managing vendors? Because I know lots of senior management people, and a big part of their job is taken up with managing third-party providers. That's not what your job is. Your job is to promote ways to link the philanthropic goals of individuals with the needs of the causes we represent. And those are not the goals of vendors. So I'm suggesting here there's an imbalance. In fact, we've lost our way. And the large presence of vendors has helped make us lose our ways. They will promise, don't worry, we'll take care of it. We'll do this. You don't have to worry about it. You can focus on other things. It takes a lot of time and effort to manage a vendor. You should know always, whenever you're using a vendor, you're getting a less percentage of the gift. Some of it's going to the third-party provider. In fact, I will even go so far as to say we hide behind vendors because we actually think that's our jobs. And I'm sitting here saying that's not our jobs. In fact, part of the annual fundraising, as I said, is to enhance relationship, to feed that pipeline for future large gifts. And by the way, those large gifts, leadership gifts, to some degree major gifts, certainly planned gifts, grow out of the annual fund, and they are the future. As it's going to get harder and harder to grow annual fundraising, both acquisition, solicitation, and resolicitation. We have wary, distrustful donors. Our future is to rely more and more at extracting the most support we can from those people that have already said, hey, I care about what you're doing. Those are leadership gifts, major gifts, and planned gifts. Gifts from estates, which is the big growth area in the future. So if you are looking at your annual fundraising, look at things, key measurements, not revenue, not acquisition, how many new people. Look at things that are very critical to the future. Things like retention rate. You've got a donor. Can you retain that donor? Can you enhance that donor over time? You're going to have to use different strategies to do that. Strategies not usually provided by third-party providers, typically. Look at things like the average gift. So retention rate and average gift, key measurements of enhancing relationship. That's a large part of your future and what you should be paying attention to. So the future trends. Annual fundraising is getting tougher and tougher and tougher. Retention is harder and harder. As I said, the trust in nonprofits, certainly in the English-speaking world, that's what I'm speaking about, in fundraising, is at an all-time low. Think about that. This is the future, folks. Along with that, the skills and know-how of personal engagement, moving people from vendor-driven, if you will, vendor-driven for the most part, models to personal engagement. Those, how to do that, how to ask for the gift, are getting harder and harder to find. We haven't done a good job of training ourselves internally in fundraising to do that kind of work. And it's critical, and it's critical for the future. We need a breakthrough. We have to reassess, I believe, the use of vendors and third-party providers. We have to learn the basics of our business ourselves, just the way I had to in 1989 when I inherited a list of 40,000 people. And I learned how to use that list through trial and error. I had to learn the business. We all did back then. And not by listening to the next sales pitch. Yes, vendors are wonderful. We need them in certain places. They are almost always a source of innovation, I'll say that. However, don't turn your business over to them. It's our business. Take back our business and use third-party providers the right way with direction and limitation. That's my thoughts on vendors in fundraising, how we are using them, how I think we have to start to use them. Good luck in your fundraising. Good luck in all of the things you try. Thanks for watching, and as always, good fundraising.